the start of 2020, myself and my partner became an indie studio. The best thing about being part of the games industry is just getting to make games.
I stream and I make content. I'm the co-founder of Black Twitch UK. Obviously, I have to do too much because my mum's African.
I get to work with lots of game studios and developers at TikTok. I'm now in a very lucky position where I get to work with a lot of those studios that I grew up playing games from.
My name is Romana Ramzan. I'm a producer at No Code Studio. You're part of a community that gets to express its creative side, and you can reach and touch and transform so many people's lives.
I am Chirag Macha. I'm a technical audio designer. You're part of something that's, making a difference in other people's lives.
I am working on a game called Glam Pursuit right now. I was getting about 1 million views per year. That's how many people played my games.
I'm Ben Wilson. I'm a creative producer. My journey into games basically started as a hobby. I made games as a hobby for a few years.
I quit my job and started my own studio. The thing I like most about making games is seeing the game brings fun and laughter to players.
What's happening here today?
Yeah, we are here as part of the Ensemble 2023.
So Ensemble is part of London Games Festival.
It's basically an exhibition where they gather people from the gaming industry.
Every year there is a cohort being selected. I'm very fortunate to be part of the cohort this year.
I think they sent the email to the wrong person because I don't know how I managed to scam my way here, but here I am.
The thing that surprised me most about the people, or my fellow ensemblists as I like to call them, I'm coining that term, who I've met today, is that everyone comes from a different background.
London is a very diverse city, but it's still nice to see all these faces gathered here today.
So today we're doing a filming shoot and photography shoot.
And it's been fun. We've been sitting there, we've been chatting, finding out about each other, and then we've had the slightly awkward moments of doing photo shoots and realising that your face can do lots of different things that you didn't expect it to. You become incredibly self-aware.
We're talking about ourselves. I get to be the main character. Everything that I want in life is happening.
The best thing about today is that it's happening. It's really nice to know that there are people out there and groups out there like Ensemble that are trying to improve representation and do things for representation.
Especially in some corners of the industry, it's easy to forget that people of colour in games exist and that we have a presence at all.
The opportunity of Ensemble is really to showcase the various voices and the people who already exist within the industry. So that sparks interest for a new generation of people to join.
It shows people that there are role models that I can identify with. There are people there who look like me, maybe sound like me, come from a similar background to me. So it is open, it is welcoming.
This is what our industry could look more like.
My journey to get to where I am today is probably a bit of a mix. I learnt to code at university and loved working in games and loved that idea. But I didn't go into games after university. I worked in advertising, and I did that for years and years with the dream that I would one day work in games. And then at the start of 2020, just before the pandemic, myself and my partner quit our jobs and became an indie studio and started working in games. It's fantastic, loving the kind of creative freedom to work on things that are our own and work on our own games and realize our own ideas. So this is our first game from our studio, Canteen. And the game is called Corporation: The Sorting Process. It's like a dystopian narrative game. We didn't know what we were going to do when we started, but we've figured something out and we've had a publisher back us and looking to release later this year, which is more than I ever kind of imagined.
So a bit about me, I own a care agency and I support vulnerable adults in the community, and I do that with my brother. And I cross that over a little bit with what I like, which is games. And as well as streaming, I have a small events company called Nox Lumina. I'm the co-founder of a team called Black Twitch UK, which is the first partnered Black team on Twitch. And I'm also, obviously, I have to do too much because my mum's African. But I'm also community manager of the Noir Network. And yeah, that's what I do. With Black Switch UK, it's all about like advocacy, trying to support, to work with other brands and networks and creators to connect the community and the people that kind of make the decisions on who works with them. I held an event last year, which was the first of its kind, called Spaces with Geeky Hattie, and Twitch partnered up with me to do this, and it was really big, it was really exciting. It was all about like educating people and also understanding not everyone has access to be able to get that information. I feel really incentivized just from being here and being around people that I look up to, and seeing myself in the room is like very special to me.
A creative producer, it's sort of a term that has been made up really for the studio. I don't really know anybody else who has my title in games. My journey into games basically started as a hobby. I made games as a hobby for a few years. And then after getting into that for a while and taking my games to exhibitions and shows and having people sit in front of my game and play it and seeing that reaction and getting validated off of that, I tried to work towards making that a more serious sort of career change, and eventually found my way into a studio job and worked as a game designer in a AAA studio for a few years. Everything I learned about game development, I did sort of from messing around and trying things out and reading and YouTube and all of that, self-taught sort of the long way. I spoke to my boss who interviewed me later on about my interview because I was curious about it, and he said that it was actually one of the easiest sort of interview decisions that he had made, just because my portfolio of work was all solo stuff, so it was really easy to see like, oh yeah, he made that because it was only him. And because usually they have to sort of look at a portfolio of stuff that has been made by a team and sort of try to deduce what contribution that person who's interviewing did. That was actually a little bit of a blessing in disguise, really. I wouldn't plan to do that, but it sort of worked out.
My journey into the games industry was slightly unusual in that I come from an academic background, but as I've discovered, there's no prescribed path to get into the games industry itself. So I studied internet software development at university. And then from there, I discovered that games was something that we could study. I then did my postgraduate in games technology. From there, did a PhD in games for health, and then joined the games industry shortly after that. So I'm a producer, and on a day-to-day basis, it's interesting because no day is the same, but it involves things like meetings, scheduling, coordinating with people to understand what it is that they are doing, if there's anything that's blocking them, and just keeping on top of things. I think the makings of a good producer come down to being organised, having the ability to listen and communicate, and also empathise as well. I've always had an interest in technology. I've played games from a young age, and it was amazing to be able to do something which I'm really truly passionate about.
I think I've got really lucky because my team is really nice. UK has a really good music production technology evolving here, and I moved from India because I wanted to move in a part of the world where I could pursue something in audio. Initially, I was interested in film music, but then when I started with university, I got interested in game audio. So I started learning about sound design and implementing audio through game engines. Then when I graduated, I joined a group of graduates. We formed an indie studio, which was funded by UK Games Fund. And then that eventually made my portfolio good enough to land a job at a AAA studio. I think the whole audio team at Frontier is spectacular, and I feel like at home with them.
I started making online dress-up games on my own website back in Turkey when I was 18, then owned a website for about 13, 14 years. Then I started making story games, visual novels on my website. And then I started making them a bit bigger and kind of more professional, and released my first commercial interactive fiction visual novels called Cardinal Cross on Steam in 2017. And then, I've moved here. I am working on a game called Glam Pursuit right now. It's a game about showbiz. It's a game about acting. I have a small community on Patreon that are following my work, and they are funding Glam Pursuit right now. I've had a lot of very young people who visited my games and played with my dress-up games. And then they have sort of started to watch how I'm progressing, because obviously I grew up with them because I started very young at 18, and then they have watched this whole journey with me. It's nice to be able to walk this journey with other people.
I'm in a lucky position where I get to work with lots of game studios and developers at TikTok, and my key focus is how do I get more people to engage with gaming content. That's just something I'm always quite keen on, and how do we kind of share gaming? How do we amplify gaming content? I've always been a fan of video games since I was younger, always wanted to work in or around games, but I didn't have any skills when it comes to game development. I'm not a coder. However, my interest was more on the business side. So when I went to university, I studied marketing. That was the thing that was more interesting to me. But I still knew that at some point I wanted to work in gaming, and I wanted to kind of merge that business background and experience and interest. So was able to get into the industry over 10 years ago. First working at King within their ad division, working with lots of brands like Universal Music and Lego. Then went on to another studio called Rovio, who makes Angry Birds. And more recently, in the last 3 years, I'm working at TikTok within their gaming partnerships team, working with game studios and gaming publishers and developers, supporting their growth on the platform and growing gaming.
I have quite a long journey into games industry. I studied animation in university, but I never worked one day as an animator because I started a board game publishing business when I was in the 4th year of the university. Surprisingly, the business went well, so it became my full-time job. I grew the business to over 100 employees and eventually sold the company. Around 2014, I took a break from the games industry because at that time, if you remember, everyone was doing mobile apps, tech startups. So I had this opportunity to join a friend's tech startup as a co-founder. And I only came back to games in 2020. I just feel like I really missed being part of the creative community. So I quit my job and started my own studio. Initially, my idea was just to run a 6-month game jam, and no matter what comes out. But I guess to my delight, the team bonded very well, and we started working on a multiplayer murder mystery game, which turned out to be Whispers in the West. We put it on Steam as part of Steam Next Fest, and we received actually many positive feedback from it, and in particular, many Twitch streamers liked the game experience. So it really made us happy that to see people enjoying the game, enjoy what we created.
I am going to make sure that every single person that I know accidentally stumbles upon it, so they can be like, "Curse, is that you?" I think I just genuinely feel so just really honoured. I was, without being too deep, my uncle was in the hospital, and he passed away on Saturday, and I told him about it, and he really wanted to see it. So it's really special for me to like, the other family members get to see it. So it's just really important for me.